Okay, so what if I told you that one of the biggest drink brands of the 90s, Snapple, almost disappeared forever? Not because the drink stopped being good, but because a giant company thought that they could step in, slap a logo on it, mass distribute it, and call it a day. And guess what? That happened, and they lost over $1.4 billion with a B, dollars, learning one powerful lesson, and that's you cannot fake authenticity. This is the story of how Snapple went from a grassroots glory to a near total collapse, and what it can teach us about branding and scale, and the most important part, being a little weird. Hey there, I'm Melody Bose, your host of Jeans with a Blazer, a podcast about rewriting the rules of work and life. Okay, so let's start with the basics and learn a little bit more about Snapple if you don't already know this. Snapple started in 1972 in Brooklyn in New York, and this was not some sleek incubator startup that you see on, Silicon Valley. It was just three dudes, Leonard Marsh, Hyman Golden, and Arnold Greensburg. So none of them actually had a background in beverages. In fact, Marsh was running a window washing business and knew, quote, as much about juice as about making an atom bomb. Cool. So how the brand came to be is it sprang from a very happy accident. Happy trees, all my Bob Ross fans out there. But basically an early batch of carbonated apple juice fermented and the caps popped off, inspiring the name Snapple. Snappy apple. It worked. Snapple also did not blow up overnight. It kind of simmered on the shelves for, honestly, a decade before catching fire. And I think that's a really important lesson because I think when people think about starting a brand or building a business or growing a business, they think like if you build it, they will come. And that's sort of true, but no one also takes into consideration the time it takes for these tried and true brands to take off. It's years of exposure and building trust and building just a relationship with your clients and your customers. So I wanted to throw that in there. So basically, by the 1980s, Snapple had carved out a niche with its all-natural ingredients and offbeat personality. So eventually, it made its way into ready-to-drink iced tea in 1987, which was a game changer for Snapple because it propelled its growth and consumers embraced it as this kind of like flavorful tea and juice type hybrid drink. So from the start, Snapple did something pretty cool. It was fun, it was unpretentious, and it had this brand voice that was really kind of unique to its personality. And the slogan was made from the best stuff on earth. Simple, clear, fun, memorable, all the makings of a good brand tagline. We love a good brand tagline. Okay, so what else made Snapple so special? Here is what set it apart. And I love this because being unique and being a brand, it's so easy to blend in, right? But to stand out and take risks and take chances, that's fun. That's unique and people gravitate towards that. So let's get into it. Snapple beverages came in a distinctive glass bottle in a world of aluminum cans like Coca-Cola. So it set it apart from that brand, and it kind of had this like premium homebrewed feel that was kind of like folksy and fun, but still kind of elegant with like a glass bottle. So all of this and a unique kind of marketing approach that Snapple had, which I'll get into, it made the brand lighthearted. It gave it personality. It wasn't trying to be this thing. Snapple was just trying to be itself. It was cool. So here is where the magic happened. So in the early 90s, Snapple became a cultural phenomenon. And we're going to get into the marketing. So Snapple's marketing strategies were the opposite of conventional, right? And that unconventionality really resonated with consumers. And you want to think about the 90s for a second. So let's take a little journey back in time. The 90s was, grunge music and individuality, questionable fashion, but still it was kind of emerging, out of kind of the wild child of the 80s, and just kind of trying to find its own identity. I feel like we always have that with each new decade. Like each new decade is almost like, okay, like what am I going to be when I grow up? And that's kind of what Snapple was. I feel like Snapple kind of grew with the consumer mindset and mentality of that decade. So in 1993, Snapple launched a famously quirky ad campaign starring Wendy Kaufman. She was actually a real-life Snapple employee who became known as Wendy the Snapple Lady. So she had these really, really funny commercials where she would read actual fan letters and she would answer customer questions like on air. It was just kind of this like maybe the OG podcaster or like the OG influencer was Wendy the Snapple Lady. But it was just kind of a fun way to approach a brand and a brand ambassador, if I may. So she had this really genuine and kind of unpolished charm, and so different from like the typical like slick, sleek spokesperson of the time. Like think someone in like a suit, or I don't know. I wasn't that old in the early 90s, so I don't really remember. But I do remember there were beepers and suits. So do with that information what you will. Anyway, she had this like personal, like authentic, like girl next door, just brand next door type of, vibe. What was also cool is Snapple was very obviously not trying to be Coca-Cola or Pepsi. It was weird. It was independent. It was for like the cool kids, the creatives, the kind of the counterculture crowd. And if we think back to the 90s and like the grunge era and like Nirvana and just kind of like Rebellious, that was Snapple. So if we think about it, like if Coca-Cola was PC, Snapple was Mac. Spooky. Okay. Anyway, it worked. So sales skyrocketed from around 232 million in 1992 to over 500 million in 1993. Girl math, that's a lot. And distribution expanded nationwide. So Snapple became this kind of anti-establishment beverage in a world of corporate soda giants. Now, everything seemed to be going so well, but then, of course, we have a plot twist, and that becomes the acquisition, the almost near downfall of our good friends at Snapple. So, 1994 happened, and here is where everything went south. Quaker Oats bought Snapple for $1.7 billion, and basically, they had a ton of success with Gatorade. We all know Gatorade, and they basically wanted to replicate that for themselves. So here is a little problem. Quaker just didn't get Snapple at all. It was almost like the quarterback coming in to, a group of theater kids just hanging out and being like, yeah, like, I'm cool. I can make this cool. When really the theater kids were cool the whole time. So joke's on you, Quaker Oats. That is foreshadowing. Okay, so here's what they got wrong, which was pretty much everything. Almost immediately, Quaker attempted to overhaul Snapple's image into something more conventional. The man stepped in and just tried to do what the man does. The new owners scrapped Snapple's kind of folksy marketing in favor of a big national campaign. Basically, they wanted to be the next Gatorade. They fired Wendy, the Snapple Lady. Rude. They didn't like her style. I guess it didn't align with their corporate vibe. And they stopped the really cool tongue-in-cheek ads that they had, which made the whole brand endearing to the public. And they had other like unconventional promotions that they had that were also axed. They had sponsored shock jocks, Rush Limbaugh and Howard Stern on their radio shows, which gave them a ton of exposure to like a huge audience. And that's part of what made them popular. Needless to say, the brand lost its edge. It lost its weird a little bit. So the lesson is read the room. Quaker Oats, read the room. If they could go back and listen to a previous episode where I talk about like know the room that you're entering into so that you can show up and be awesome. Know your audience and know what they expect from you, and don't try to change something that's already awesome. So another thing is that Snapple had thrived with a decentralized network of about 30 different contract bottlers and 300 independent distributors who specialized getting Snapple into different health food stores, convenience shops, and just small like cold channel outlets. What they tried to do, or what they wanted to do, is they wanted to force it into big box grocery chains, and there's not a problem with that, wanting to expand. But the process of how they did that is they stripped away its quirky marketing and they replaced its loyal network of distributors, right, the little guys, the ones who essentially helped Snapple build its street cred, and they switched to corporate partners. Again, not cool, Quaker. Okay, so why they did this is they saw these small distributors as inefficient, and then they moved all of their production into their own facilities to scale. And then, here's another one. They also put their product in much larger bottle sizes, 32 ounce and even 64 ounce jugs. Can you just think about that for a second? Like having a jug of Snapple, that just feels weird. That gives me the ick. It's like, okay, it's a bottle. You take it with you, you buy it from the gas station, you carry it with you, you have a few in your fridge. It's like a multiple scenario thing. It's not just like a jug of, you can't do that. So people were not happy about it, and as a result, sales tanked. People who loved Snapple stopped loving it, and new customers just didn't care about this new approach. The impact of Quaker's mismanagement was dramatic and swift, and it hit them right where it hurt, in the wallet, which sales peaked at $674 million at the start of 1994, and it began falling roughly by 20% each year after the Quaker takeover. By 1997, annual sales had crashed to around $440 million. So, they had a few years to get it right, and they kept on going. Okay, so basically, in just a few years, Snapple had gone from this pop culture darling, to just a fading fad on the brink of irrelevance. Once those sales dropped so dramatically, Quaker panicked and they sold Snapple for just $300 million. And math, that's a $1.4 billion loss for Quaker. It went down in branding history as one of the most expensive branding failures. However, there is good news, and this story indeed does have a happy ending. Everyone loves a good comeback story, and Snapple is just kind of like its own white knight. So Snapple didn't vanish, thank goodness. It actually got picked up by Triarch, don't know if I'm saying that correctly, but it was an investment company led by investor Nelson Peltz. It was a holding company that actually understood what made Snapple. What they did is they just basically, they control alt deleted. They brought back everything that made Snapple quirky. And it's just interesting to think that a smaller company was like, okay, like I can undo this. I can reverse, I can go back in time. So when Triarch bought Snapple in 1997 for $300 million, just, a mere $300 million, if you're an investor, bargain. You can find that in change in your couch. But anyway, they got it for a pretty sweet deal. And the move was made knowing that they didn't need explosive growth to justify it. They just needed to restore Snapple's sales, and it would have been good enough for them, basically. So Snapple quickly went into damage control mode and started to try repairing those bridges that Quaker had unfortunately burned down pretty badly. They re-embraced the original network of independent distributors, yay for the little guys, and it scrapped the large bottle concept. They were like, guys, this isn't working. And they went back to the 16-ounce glass bottles that we know and love today. So the back to basics strategy, shock, it worked. Snapple's decline flattened out, and then it pretty much reversed as the 1990s drew to a close. And by the year 2000, sales were rebounding, and the brand's kind of hip vibe was largely restored. It gets even better. The turnaround was so dramatic that Cadbury Schweppes, a global beverage powerhouse, you might be familiar with them, they agreed to acquire Snapple from Triarch in September of 2000 for around $1 billion. Okay, so we remember Triarch bought Snapple for $300 million. That tripled Triarch's investment in just 3 years. Nice. And Cadbury Schweppes knew they did not want to repeat history, and they did not make the same mistake. Oh, no. They didn't mess with the brand. Rather, they contributed to it. And one of the most memorable additions during this era was the formal rollout of Snapple Real Facts, which you can see when you pop open a bottle of Snapple and you look under the cap. This started in 2001. It had fun facts, trivia, things that just consumers love. This like such a little thing, but it had such a big impact. Coca-Cola couldn't do that or didn't do that. Pepsi didn't do that. Bummer. Anyway, it helped reinforce the quirkiness of the brand, and it was just in time for a new generation to welcome it. So now, Snapple enters the year 2000, good start of the year, ready to kind of have its own little like brand glow up. Good for you, Snapple. Also, Snapple turned out to be a little bit of an influencer, and it actually secured a deal to become the official beverage of New York City, which placed Snapple juices and teas in public school vending machines and government offices across the city. So eventually, the brand became part of the newly formed Dr. Pepper Snapple Group in 2008 when Cadbury spun off its North American beverages. Later, it found itself under the umbrella of Keurig Dr. Pepper after a 2018 merger. Yet, through all of these transitions, Snapple's core identity remained. People knew what they did wrong, and they were not gonna touch that. So industry analysts note that Snapple has consistently upheld the same brand values it started with: quality ingredients, aka the best stuff on earth, and fun. It had an approachability to its tone that we all know and love, and it just kept that going, plus the continual innovation with its flavors and the trivia fun facts thing under the bottle to keep fans excited. So the lesson here, there's a few lessons here, but what can the almost near fail and collapse of Snapple teach us? So you can scale a brand, but you can't fake soul, right? So Snapple wasn't just a drink, just like any brand that you gravitate towards isn't just that brand. It's this curated image that changes the way you feel about something when you associate with that brand. Snapple was a vibe. It was a community. It was a moment, right? And when Quaker came in and they tried to like clean up that image and like polish it up and, you take it off the streets and give it a little haircut and put a shiny collar on it, they removed the very thing that made people care about it and really identify with it. So here are some takeaways for creators, entrepreneurs, and those who are building brands. Number 1, people don't connect with perfect, they connect with real. Number 2, growth is great, but don't lose your weird. And number 3, if you've built something that works, honor the story behind it. Don't bulldoze it for the boardroom. It's just not worth it. So Snapple could have disappeared, but instead it became a case study in brand identity, marketing mistakes, and the power of staying true to what makes you different. Go out there and be weird today, and I'll catch you next time. That's a wrap on this episode of Jeans with the Blazer. If today's conversation gave you something to think about, a mindset shift, or just the push you needed, do me a favor. Subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode. Leave a review wherever you enjoy your podcasts. It helps more people find it, and it keeps these conversations going. And I love hearing from you. Follow @Jeans with the Blazer and tag me with your biggest takeaways, your latest wins, or just tell me what topics you want to hear about next. See you next time.